there! This tutorial is going to take you through using Autocrat to respond to a student check-in using Google Forms. To do this, you're going to need three things. The Google Form check-in. I'll attach a link to the one that I use if you'd like to use it as a template. A Google document or even a slide that will act as a response to the student, and the Autocrat extension. First, let's take a quick look at my Google form. This is a simple check-in that I do with my students every few weeks or so. It takes about 5 minutes of class time. I ask a few simple things like what their current moods are and a fun would you rather question. The question that I'm going to focus on for most of my responses, though, is this last question. Is there anything you want me to know? As you can see up here, I have already had a few students answer this form. You can see this by the number of responses that show up right here. The next part I'll need is a Google Doc that will serve as the letter for my students. You can also use Google Slides for this now, but I'll be using Docs for this tutorial. Here is an example of what I do. As you can see, it's basically a form letter, but portions of it have the ability to be merged with information from Autocrat, which I'll get to in a minute. Basically, anything that is written on this document will be sent to the students I choose to send it to. However, anything that is in these tags, the double-angled brackets, will be merged with whatever I have in the spreadsheet that comes from the Google form. Again, I'll show you this in a minute. The merge tags allow the form letter to be less of a form letter. It will have their individual name in the salutation, and it will have a personal response to what they wrote in the body of the letter. Some of these merge tags will come from the students' responses, like their names or whether or not they asked for a meme, and some will come from responses that I wrote in the spreadsheet. If you take a look at where it says Note 1 and Note 2, the next step that we look at in the spreadsheet will make more sense. I'll also attach a copy of this form letter if you want to use it as a template. Now let's take a look at the spreadsheet. All Google Forms allow you to view a report of student responses in a Google Sheet. Yay, data. To view this, go to the Google form, click on Responses, and click on the green Google Sheet icon right here. It will ask you to title it. I usually just keep the title it comes up with, and then you can open it up by clicking on Create. This will show you all of the data that was collected by the Google form. I've hidden the students' names for privacy reasons. As you can see, every answer that my students gave to me is here and organized by question. I'm going to do two things so that I can easily respond to my students. First, I'm going to make it so that no matter which column I'm looking at, I will always see the students' names. To do this, I'm going to hide the timestamp and the email columns. Make sure you don't delete it. You're going to need the email column later. Now I just need to move the margin here so that it's on the other side of the students' names. Now, no matter where I go on the sheet, I always see the students' names and the column headings. Next come the responses. Now, you might make it easier on yourself by wrapping the text so that you can see everything a little more easily. I'm going to click this button right here. That will select the entire grid. Then I'm going to go to wrap text. It's this button right here, and you want this middle one right here that says wrap. Now I can more easily see everything. Next comes the responses. You only need to do one response, frankly, but I do two. One that sort of repeats what they said. This will both remind them of what they wrote, especially if I take a few days to get back to them. And it also shows that I paid attention to what they said. And two, another note that responds to what they said. To do this, I need to create a heading for two more columns. Like I said, you can get away with just doing one. It just depends on what you wrote in your form letter in the Google document. Now, if you remember when I told you to take a look at Note 1 and Note 2 in my Google document, this is where that comes in. I'm going to title these two blank columns Note 1 and Note 2. Note 1, if you recall, comes right after I saw that you said. So in this column, I'm going to write a very quick summary of what they said in their form. If they didn't say anything, like this student or this student, then I usually note something else from the form, like the would you rather preference. Those are actually easy because I can just copy and paste the same thing for those same answers. So I'm going to quickly jot down my summaries here. I don't spend a lot of time on this one. It takes me about 15 minutes to do 4 classes. Next comes the response. Again, in my form letter, this note comes after the clause let me just say that. When I'm writing the responses, I need to make sure that they fit into that sentence. I'm probably making this harder on myself than I need to by trying to fit it into a sentence. You can always simplify things by having your note be the only thing that you end up merging. This takes a little longer than the summary. I would say about 20 minutes for 4 classes. Once I'm done with that, I'm ready to do the merge and send it to my students. I'm going to use the Autocrat extension to do this. The first thing you'll need to do is add the Autocrat extension. From the Google Sheet, go to Extensions, Add-ons, Get Add-ons. Look for Autocrat and click on it. I already have the extension, which is why it says uninstall, but yours should stay install. Just click on the button and install it onto your browser. Now, from the spreadsheet, to initiate Autocrat, I'll go to Extensions and I'll click on Autocrat and Launch. Sometimes it will say Open. If you have no merge jobs set up yet, it will look like this. If you have some merge jobs open, it will have a bar showing those jobs. For now, you're creating a new job, so click the red button saying New Job. Name this job. I want to make sure it will be different from jobs I may have in the future, so this one will be Check-in Response Week 1, January 2022. Then click Next. Now I need to find my template. That's the Google Doc that I made with the merge tags. It's in my drive, so I just need to click the From Drive button and find it. Click Select, then click Next. Because of the angle brackets that we used in the Google document, Autocrat has found which fields need merging. Sometimes it'll figure it out for you, other times you'll need to do it manually. Since my first name column on the Google form was quite long, asking for their nickname, etc., it wasn't able to figure out the match for that one. I need to do that one manually by clicking on this drop-down menu and finding the one that will correspond to the student's first name, which is right here. I'm also going to do that for Note 1 and Note 2. Then click Next. The file name will be the individual letters that you send to each student. I'm going to have the computer save them as the students' names followed by Check-in Response January 2022. You do this by copying the first and last name tags and then typing in the name of the document. To get the tags, click on this blue arrow, click on the tag that you want, and it will copy it. Then paste it here. Then I'll click the space bar so that a space goes between the first name and last name. Then I'm going to copy and paste the last name by doing the same thing that I just did, but for the last name. Then I'll put a space and the title of the document. For the type, you have the option of sending the letter to your students as a Google Doc or a PDF. The PDF is nice because no one can mess with it. The Google Doc lets you fix something if you find a typo after you send it. Up to you. I'm going to choose Google Docs for this one. Since you are sending a different letter to each student, you want multiple output mode. Then click Next. If you want more organization, you can create a special folder for where your documents will go. For example, you can set up a folder called Autocrat, or you can just have it go into your drive. Then click Next. You don't need a dynamic folder reference for this one, so just click Next here. Setting the merge condition is the next step. I only want to send out letters to students to whom I have responded. Therefore, I'm going to click on the blue Add Condition button here, and I'm going to choose Note 2 and leave it as not null. This means that Autocrat will only send out letters to students whose Note 2 column has something in it. If that is your only condition, then you can click Next. Now, I also asked my students if they wanted a meme. As you saw when I showed you the template document, this letter had a meme. I made 2 documents, one with a meme and one without. Since I'm working on the one with a meme, I want the computer to only send this document to those who asked for a meme. I'm going to click Add Condition again, choose the column that asks about a meme, and change Not Null to Sounds Awesome, since that's what the answer was. You do need to make sure that the capitalization and punctuation are exactly the same as on the form. Note that this reverted back to timestamp at some point, and I didn't check that. So make sure that, again, Note 2 is not null. Then click Next. You are going to share these documents with your students. So click Yes. I chose to share this as a Google document, but I don't need them to edit it. So I'm going to choose View Only Doc. I can also change it to a PDF here. You can allow collaborators to reshare, and you want the email to come from your address. So keep the send from generic address as a no. We're almost done. To email your response to the individual student, you need to put the email tag into the To section here. Click on the blue arrow, choose email, and paste it into the To section. To make the email come from you and not an impersonal robot, type your email address next to the Reply To section. Type in a subject heading that will let your students know what the email is about, like response to your first week check-in or here's your meme. Then type a quick message letting them know that they should open the attached document. To make it more personal, you can use the first name tag in the email as well. Then click Next. The last box asks about triggers. When do you want the form to be sent? Most likely you want both of these to be no. The form trigger will mean that Autocrat will send the document out as soon as someone completes the form. Since you're writing responses for each of these, you want no. Choosing yes is helpful for when you don't need to add responses after the form is turned in. For example, a receipt for an exit ticket or an extra credit certificate for a correct answer, but that's another video. The time trigger would send out the letters at a specific time. I send them out manually, so I keep this on no also. Then click on Save. Since we're sending them out manually, there is one last step that you need to do. To run the job, you need to click the play button, which is this triangle here. If you want to preview first, though, you can click the preview button, the one that looks like an eyeball, and click on the button that says Preview for First Manageable Row. This will give you a link to open the first letter that will be sent out. It's a good idea to do a preview just to make sure your tags are working and that the letter looks like how you want it to look. Then click the Run button and Autocrat will do the rest. One last thing, if you end up having students do the form after you have run the job, you can still reply to them this way without having to do all of the work again. Simply fill in the spreadsheets for the late students, then open Autocrat again, and find the job that corresponds with that spreadsheet. Click on the Run button, and it will send out the letters only to the students who both meet the conditions you set and who have not yet received one. It does seem a little complicated, I know, but it does go faster the more often you do it, and I really like the idea of giving my students a little personal attention. Thanks for watching. Be good and be well.